You are not authorized to be here. I told you to step back.
I have every right to be here. This identification proves it.
You're in the wrong place, woman. The welfare center is 2 blocks down. Security Officer Derek Turner's words sliced through the federal courthouse lobby like a blade as Dr. Rachel Thompson approached the checkpoint in her tailored charcoal suit. Rachel calmly presented her visitor's credentials. "I have official business here today," Turner sneered. "Official business? What kind of business? Your boyfriend up for sentencing." "I'm here for court proceedings, officer." "Sure you are." Turner's voice dripped with contempt. "Women like you have no place in legitimate courtrooms." Rachel maintained her composure. "Women like me? Don't act confused." Turner moved closer, hostility radiating from every pore. "This isn't your neighborhood drama club." Before Rachel could respond, Turner's palm cracked across her face. Her visitor's badge clattered to the marble floor. "Take your fake documents and leave." Rachel touched her stinging cheek, her gaze fixed on Turner's nameplate. She methodically gathered her scattered papers, while shocked onlookers watched in frozen silence. "Officer Turner," she said quietly, reading his identification. "I'll remember this moment. Have you ever been completely dismissed because someone made assumptions about who you were? Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. What happens next will leave you speechless." 3 weeks later, the federal courtroom hummed with tension as the civil rights lawsuit Thompson versus Turner commenced. Derek Turner sat confidently at the defense table, his attorney whispering last-minute strategy. After 22 years on the force without facing real accountability, Turner believed the system would shield him once again. Turner took the witness stand with the swagger of someone who'd never experienced genuine consequences. His attorney, a sharp-suited man named Harrison, began questioning. "Officer Turner, describe what transpired on April 3rd at the courthouse entrance." Turner adjusted his collar, meeting the jury's eyes directly. "I was executing my standard security duties when I noticed a suspicious individual attempting to circumvent normal procedures." "Describe this person's conduct." "The defendant displayed aggressive behavior from the moment she approached. She refused standard security measures and became hostile when I tried to verify her documentation." Rachel sat at the plaintiff's table, representing herself. She took careful notes but revealed no emotion as Turner spun his fabricated narrative. "When I requested to examine her papers, she became physically threatening. She advanced toward me menacingly, forcing me to respond using defensive protocols." Harrison nodded sympathetically. "What exactly did this defensive response involve?" "I was compelled to restrain the individual when she presented a clear security risk. My actions fell completely within departmental guidelines." The prosecutor assisting Rachel's case, a determined woman named Chen, immediately objected. "Your Honor, the defendant is characterizing assault as restraint." "Sustained. The witness will provide factual descriptions only." Turner's jaw clenched. "I made minimal contact to neutralize what I assessed as an immediate threat." "Officer Turner," Harrison continued, "in your 22-year career, have you faced misconduct allegations?" "Never. My record is impeccable. I've earned commendations for dedication and professionalism. I've protected this courthouse from real threats for over 2 decades." Turner's confidence swelled. What occurred that day was textbook security protocol. The individual tried accessing restricted areas with questionable documentation. When confronted, she became belligerent. Elaborate on the suspicious documentation. The papers looked hastily assembled, potentially forged. Genuine court documents contain specific security features that these materials lacked. Rachel's pen stopped moving. She looked up at Turner with an expression of calculated patience. Turner continued his performance. "I've encountered every type of fraudulent credential imaginable. Gang associates, dealers, people smuggling contraband. This individual matched the profile perfectly." "What profile, Officer Turner?" "Someone with no legitimate courthouse business attempting access through deception and intimidation." Chen stood again. "Objection. The witness is making unsubstantiated character judgments." "Overruled. The witness may describe his professional assessment. Turner smiled slightly. My professional assessment identified this individual as a potential security threat. Her demeanor, confrontational attitude, and suspicious documentation raised multiple red flags. Did you attempt de-escalation? Absolutely. I repeatedly requested compliance with standard procedures. I explained policies calmly and professionally. She refused cooperation at every turn. Turner was gaining momentum now, embellishing effortlessly. When she began advancing aggressively, I made a split-second decision to protect myself and others. Turner's body language radiated certainty. He'd told similar stories before the review boards countless times. They'd always believed him. Officer Turner, did racial bias motivate your actions? Absolutely not. I treat every courthouse visitor with equal professionalism, regardless of background. I've been protecting people of all races and ethnicities for 22 years. Turner looked directly at Rachel. If this individual had been white, Asian, or any other ethnicity, my response would have been identical. I assess threats based on behavior, not appearance. The lie came so naturally that Turner almost believed it himself. Furthermore, Turner added, I believe this lawsuit exploits current social tensions. The plaintiff is attempting to transform a routine security incident into something it wasn't. Chen objected, but the judge allowed Turner to finish. I've witnessed this pattern before. Someone violates courthouse rules, faces accountability, then claims discrimination to avoid responsibility. It undermines people experiencing genuine prejudice. Turner's attorney presented edited body cam footage conveniently beginning after the initial confrontation. The video showed Rachel appearing to move toward Turner, with audio carefully edited to remove his provocative remarks. This footage clearly demonstrates the plaintiff advancing aggressively, Harrison explained to the jury. Officer Turner's response was measured and appropriate. Two fellow officers testified as character witnesses, praising Turner's professionalism. They described him as a mentor and exemplary colleague. Turner returned for redirect examination, confidence bordering on arrogance. Officer Turner, how have these false accusations affected your family? Turner's voice adopted a wounded tone. It's been devastating. My wife and children have endured public scrutiny. My 22-year reputation has been unfairly damaged by someone pursuing a financial settlement. Do you regret your actions that day? I regret that this individual escalated a routine security check into confrontation. I regret she's pursuing this frivolous lawsuit instead of accepting responsibility. Turner faced the jury with practiced sincerity. I've dedicated my career to protecting people and ensuring courthouse security. I won't apologize for performing my job professionally. As Turner left the witness stand, he felt satisfied with his testimony. He'd portrayed Rachel as an aggressive opportunist and himself as a dedicated public servant. His edited evidence supported his story, and his character witnesses had validated his integrity. Turner glanced at Rachel with barely concealed contempt. She continued taking notes, maintaining that irritating composure. He remained confident the jury would see through her act. After all, who would they believe? A respected law enforcement officer with 22 years of service, or someone who clearly didn't belong in their courtroom? The system had protected Turner before. He was certain it would protect him again. He had no idea his carefully constructed lies were about to collapse in ways he never imagined possible. When Dr. Rachel Thompson rose to take the witness stand, the courtroom fell silent. Her movements were deliberate and graceful, carrying an authority that seemed to expand the space around her. She wore a navy blue suit that whispered understated power, and her leather briefcase, clearly expensive and meticulously organized, sat prominently at the plaintiff's table. Please state your name for the record. Dr. Rachel Elizabeth Thompson. Dr. Thompson, please describe what happened on April 3rd at the federal courthouse. Rachel's voice was calm and precise, the kind that commanded attention without demanding it. I arrived at approximately 9:15 a.m. for legitimate business. I approached the security checkpoint with proper identification and a valid visitor's credential. Turner shifted uncomfortably at the defense table. Rachel continued, Officer Turner immediately made assumptions about my presence. Without examining my credentials, he directed me to leave, suggesting I belonged at the welfare center instead. Rachel paused, consulting notes that were meticulously organized in a legal folder with multiple tabs and color-coded sections. When I attempted to present my visitor's credential, Officer Turner made several derogatory comments about my character. He asked if my boyfriend was being sentenced and stated that women like me don't belong in legitimate courtrooms. How did you respond? I remained calm and attempted to explain I had legitimate courthouse business. I didn't raise my voice, make threatening gestures, or behave aggressively in any manner. Rachel's composure was remarkable. Even recounting the humiliation, her voice never wavered. Her professionalism never cracked. Then what occurred? Officer Turner struck me across the face with his open palm. The force was sufficient to leave visible marks and cause my credential to fall to the floor. Harrison objected. Your Honor, the plaintiff is characterizing defensive restraint as assault. Rachel turned slightly toward Harrison, and for just a moment something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, but a knowing patience suggesting she'd dealt with men like him countless times before. Sustained. The witness will describe the physical contact without characterization. Officer Turner made contact with my face using his open palm. The contact was forceful enough to turn my head and cause a stinging sensation lasting several minutes. Rachel reached into her briefcase and produced a manila folder. I have medical documentation of the resulting contusion, photographed 3 hours after the incident. The photos were passed to the jury, clear evidence of bruising on Rachel's left cheek with distinct finger mark patterns visible. Dr. Thompson, what did you do after this physical contact? I collected my documents from the floor and read Officer Turner's nameplate aloud to ensure correct identification. I then left the courthouse and immediately sought medical attention for documentation purposes. Harrison stood for cross-examination, clearly expecting to rattle this pro-SE plaintiff. Dr. Thompson, isn't it true you were attempting unauthorized access to restricted courthouse areas? No. I had a valid visitor's credential for the specific proceedings I intended to observe. What proceedings were those? Rachel glanced at her expensive watch, a subtle movement that somehow conveyed both punctuality and authority. I was there to observe police reform hearings as an interested citizen. An interested citizen? What qualifies your interest in police reform? Something almost resembling a smile crossed Rachel's face. I have extensive experience with police accountability measures and departmental oversight protocols. Harrison pressed on, unaware he was walking into a trap. What kind of experience could you possibly have with police oversight? I've studied various reform implementation strategies and have particular familiarity with Officer Turner's service record and approach to community relations. Turner leaned forward, whispering urgently to Harrison. How could this woman know about his service record? Dr. Thompson, are you suggesting you researched Officer Turner before this incident? I'm saying I'm quite familiar with patterns of misconduct and the institutional failures that enable them. Rachel's legal knowledge was becoming increasingly apparent. She objected to several of Harrison's questions with precise citations of procedural rules, demonstrating courtroom protocol understanding far beyond typical plaintiffs. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is asking compound questions and assuming facts not in evidence. Sustained. Harrison looked flustered. This wasn't proceeding as planned. Dr. Thompson, why are you representing yourself instead of hiring qualified counsel? I believe I'm quite qualified to represent my own interests in this matter. But surely someone with actual legal training would be more appropriate. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Rachel checked her watch again. 1:45 p.m. She seemed to be tracking something specific. Dr. Thompson, what do you hope to gain from this lawsuit? Justice, accountability, and assurance that what happened to me doesn't happen to others. Are you seeking monetary damages? I'm seeking systemic change. Any money awarded will be donated to police bias training programs. This answer clearly surprised Harrison. Most civil rights plaintiffs were primarily interested in financial compensation. You're not interested in personal financial gain? No. This case is about institutional accountability and abuse of power. Rachel's responses were becoming more confident, more authoritative. She spoke about police procedures and civil rights law with the precision of someone deeply familiar with both. Dr. Thompson, how do you explain your extensive knowledge of police procedures and legal protocols? Rachel smiled, a real smile this time, one that suggested she was anticipating something. All will become clear very soon. She checked her watch once more. 1:52 p.m. In fact, I have a critical appointment at 2:00 p.m. that may provide additional context for these proceedings. The judge looked puzzled. Dr. Thompson, are you requesting a recess? Not requesting, Your Honor, but I believe the court may find it beneficial when my 2:00 p.m. appointment arrives. Turner was growing increasingly agitated. Something about Rachel's confidence, her legal knowledge, her mysterious references to his service record, none of it made sense. Dr. Thompson, Harrison continued, isn't it true you're simply an activist seeking to profit from false racism allegations? Rachel's composure never broke, but her voice carried a new edge of authority. Counselor, I think you'll find that assumption to be poorly informed. At exactly 1:58 p.m., Rachel's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and that knowing smile returned. Your Honor, I believe my 2 p.m. appointment has arrived at the courthouse. With the court's permission, I think this individual's presence may shed considerable light on these proceedings. The courtroom stirred with curiosity. Turner shifted nervously, sensing something was about to go catastrophically wrong, but having no idea what. Rachel Thompson sat back in her chair, the picture of calm confidence, as if she'd been orchestrating this entire moment from the very beginning. The evening before the court hearing, Dr. Rachel Thompson sat in her home office, surrounded by the quiet symbols of a life dedicated to justice. The walls told a story that Derek Turner could never have imagined. Police Academy graduation photos, FBI training certificates, commendations for Detective of the Year, and community service excellence. A law degree from Georgetown University hung prominently beside photos of Rachel in various police uniforms spanning 22 years of service. But tonight, Rachel's attention was focused on a thick manila folder labeled Turner Derek Personnel Review. 17 misconduct complaints spread across her desk like evidence at a crime scene. 9 had been dismissed without proper investigation, buried under procedural technicalities and institutional protection. Another pattern of abuse, Rachel murmured, reviewing case files showing Turner consistently targeting people of color for additional screening that somehow never identified actual threats. Her laptop displayed a video call with Police Commissioner Valdez, who was reviewing final preparations for tomorrow's announcement. The timing is perfect, Rachel, Valdez said through the screen. The swearing-in ceremony at 2 p.m. will send a clear message about our commitment to accountability and reform. Rachel nodded, her mind already focused on the complex choreography of tomorrow's events. Turner has no idea what's coming. His arrogance will be his downfall. The office door opened, and Rachel's 18-year-old daughter Jasmine entered with a concerned expression. She'd seen the courthouse incident video on social media, along with thousands of others who'd shared and commented on the injustice. Mom, why are you suing that officer yourself? Why not just hire a lawyer and move on? Rachel looked up from her files, seeing in her daughter's face the same questions that would soon be answered in the most dramatic way possible. Because sometimes, sweetheart, justice requires more than just winning a case. Sometimes it requires changing the entire system. Jasmine sat on the edge of the desk, careful not to disturb the organized evidence. But it's dangerous, right? Going up against the police when you're... She gestured at her own brown skin. When I'm black, Rachel smiled. Jasmine, tomorrow you're going to learn something important about power. Real power doesn't come from the uniform or the badge. It comes from competence, integrity, and the courage to use both when it matters most. Rachel's phone rang. The caller ID showed Chief Martinez, retired, her mentor from her early days in law enforcement, the woman who'd guided her rise through the ranks when others doubted a black woman could lead. Tomorrow's the day, Rachel? Chief Martinez's gravelly voice carried both pride and concern. You sure you're ready for this? I've been ready for 22 years, Chief. Turner represents everything wrong with police culture. The assumption that badge equals immunity, that certain people don't deserve respect or dignity. And when you reveal who you are, Sarah's voice hardened with determination. Then Turner learns that the woman he thought he could humiliate with impunity is about to become his commanding officer. Chief Martinez chuckled. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. After the call, Rachel returned to her preparation ritual. She practiced her closing arguments while organizing evidence files with the precision of someone who'd built cases that ended careers. Her uniform hung ready in the closet, dress blues with 4 stars that would tomorrow transform her from plaintiff to police chief in a single moment. Jasmine watched her mother's methodical preparation with growing admiration. Mom, you've been planning this whole thing, haven't you? Planning for justice? Yes, but Turner made his own choices, sweetheart. I'm just ensuring those choices have consequences. Rachel set multiple alarms on her phone. 6 a.m. for final case review, 8 a.m. for courthouse arrival, 1:30 p.m. for the transition to police headquarters. Every detail had been considered, every timing calculated for maximum impact. Jasmine, tomorrow you'll see something that doesn't happen often enough in our world. You'll see a black woman not just demand respect, but command it from a position of undeniable authority. Rachel closed the Turner personnel file and placed it in her briefcase, next to her speech for the swearing-in ceremony. 2 documents that would end one career and officially begin another. What happens to Officer Turner after tomorrow? Rachel's expression was thoughtful but resolute. He faces the consequences of his actions, real consequences, from someone who has the power to enforce them. As midnight approached, Rachel reviewed her timeline one final time. Court testimony in the morning, building the case methodically. Then at exactly 2:01 p.m., the moment when Derek Turner would discover that the woman he'd humiliated was about to become the most powerful person in his professional world. Tomorrow at 2:00 p.m., Rachel said quietly, everything changes. She turned off the lights in her office, but the weight of tomorrow's revelation filled the darkness. Derek Turner had no idea that his victim was about to become his judge, jury, and commanding officer all at once. The second day of proceedings began with a momentum shift Turner couldn't have anticipated. Rachel's legal team, she had quietly retained counsel for evidence presentation while maintaining her pro-SE status for testimony, entered the courtroom carrying boxes of materials that made Turner's confidence begin to crack. Attorney Williams, a respected civil rights lawyer who'd been working behind the scenes with Rachel, approached the bench with the gravity of someone about to detonate a bomb. Your Honor, we have obtained significant evidence that directly contradicts the defendant's testimony and reveals a disturbing pattern of misconduct extending far beyond this single incident. Harrison immediately objected. Your Honor, any additional evidence should have been disclosed during discovery. The evidence was obtained through public records request fulfilled yesterday evening, Williams replied smoothly. We are prepared to authenticate everything through proper channels. Judge Martinez nodded. Proceed, but I want proper foundation for all exhibits. Williams moved to the prosecution table, where a laptop was connected to the courtroom's display system. Your Honor, we will present unedited security footage from 4 different camera angles at the federal courthouse, obtained directly from the courthouse security office. Turner's face went pale. His edited body cam footage had conveniently started after his initial confrontation with Rachel, but courthouse security cameras ran continuously. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Williams began, you are about to see what really happened on April 3rd. The first video began playing. The timestamp showed 9:14 a.m., 1 minute before Rachel's arrival. Turner was visible at his security station, laughing with a colleague about something on his phone. Note the defendant's relaxed demeanor, Williams narrated. He shows no signs of being on high alert for security threats. At 9:15 a.m. exactly, Rachel entered the frame. Her professional appearance and confident stride were undeniable. She approached the checkpoint with her visitor's credential already visible in her hand. The audio was crystal clear. Turner's voice, you're in the wrong place, honey. The welfare center is 2 blocks down. Rachel's calm response, I have official business here today. Turner, without even looking at her credential. Official business? What kind of business? Your boyfriend up for sentencing? The jury could see Rachel's composure, her attempt to explain her legitimate purpose, Turner's escalating aggression without any provocation from her. Then came the moment that destroyed Turner's entire defense. I'm here for court proceedings, officer. Sure you are. Women like you have no place in legitimate courtrooms. Women like me? Don't act confused. This isn't your neighborhood drama club. And then, with Rachel standing completely still, her hands at her sides, Turner's open palm struck her face with a sharp crack that echoed through the courthouse lobby. The jury watched in stunned silence as Rachel touched her cheek, collected her scattered papers with dignity, and quietly read Turner's nameplate before walking away. Williams paused the video. Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Turner testified under oath that Dr. Thompson was aggressive, threatening, and advancing toward him. The video evidence clearly shows this testimony was false. Harrison was frantically whispering with Turner, whose face had gone from pale to ashen gray. Williams continued with additional evidence that made Turner's situation progressively worse. We also obtained Officer Turner's complete body cam footage from that day. The defense's edited version played side by side with the complete footage. The manipulation was obvious. Critical portions showing Turner's verbal abuse and the unprovoked slap had been deliberately removed. The defense presented edited footage that removed the most damaging evidence of Officer Turner's misconduct. This represents not just perjury, but tampering with evidence in a federal proceeding. Medical examiner Dr. Patricia Hayes took the stand to testify about Rachel's injuries. Her analysis was damning. The bruising pattern on Dr. Thompson's face is entirely consistent with being struck by an open palm. The force required to create this level of tissue damage indicates significant impact. There are no defensive wounds or signs that Dr. Thompson was engaged in any physical struggle. Dr. Hayes displayed enhanced photographs showing the clear outline of fingers across Rachel's cheek. This injury pattern is impossible to fake and completely contradicts any claim of mutual combat or defensive action. But Williams wasn't finished. The next witness was Janet Morrison, the court clerk who'd worked at the courthouse for 16 years. Ms. Morrison, did you witness the incident between Officer Turner and Dr. Thompson? I saw the whole thing. I was returning from lunch and heard Officer Turner making those awful comments. That poor woman never did anything wrong. In your 16 years working here, have you observed similar incidents involving Officer Turner? Harrison objected, but the judge allowed the testimony as relevant to pattern evidence. Oh yes, Turner's been doing this for years, always picking on black folks, Hispanic folks, anyone he thinks doesn't belong. We've complained to his supervisors multiple times, but nothing ever happens. Morrison's testimony opened the floodgates. She identified 14 similar incidents over the past 20 months, where Turner had screened people of color for additional security checks that never identified actual threats. He calls it keeping the riffraff out, but we all know what he really means. Williams presented Turner's radio chatter from that day, obtained through public records. Turner's voice was clearly audible, describing Rachel to his colleagues. Another welfare queen trying to game the system handled it appropriately. The final piece of evidence was a technical analysis of Turner's body cam. Digital forensics expert Robert Kim testified that the footage had been deliberately edited, with specific time segments removed and file timestamps altered. This level of editing requires technical knowledge and intent to deceive. The missing segments were precisely those that would have shown Officer Turner's initial verbal abuse and the physical assault. Turner was visibly sweating now, his confident demeanor completely shattered. He kept glancing at the exit as if considering escape. Williams saved the most damaging evidence for last. Through public records requests, Rachel's team had obtained Turner's complete personnel file, including the 17 misconduct complaints that had been buried or dismissed. Officer Turner has a documented history of targeting people of color for harassment disguised as security protocols. In every case, his threat assessments proved to be based on racial bias rather than actual security concerns. The pattern was undeniable. Turner consistently escalated encounters with black and Hispanic courthouse visitors while treating white visitors with routine professionalism. Internal emails showed his supervisors were aware of complaints, but chose to ignore them. One email from Turner's lieutenant read, "Turner's methods are questionable, but effective at keeping certain elements away from the courthouse. Sometimes you have to bend the rules to maintain order." Harrison attempted damage control during cross-examination, but the evidence was overwhelming. Turner's credibility was destroyed, his pattern of abuse exposed, and his support system revealed as complicit in covering up his misconduct. Rachel sat at the plaintiff's table, checking her watch. 1:45 p.m. Her expression remained calm, but there was something in her eyes now, a quiet satisfaction of someone watching a carefully constructed plan come to fruition. The evidence phase had accomplished exactly what she'd intended. Turner wasn't just exposed as a liar and an abuser. He was revealed as part of a systemic problem that had been allowed to fester for years. In 15 minutes, the final piece of Rachel's strategy would fall into place, and Derek Turner would learn just how catastrophically he had misjudged the woman he'd thought he could humiliate with impunity. At exactly 2 p.m., the courtroom doors opened with an authority that made everyone turn. Police Commissioner Valdez entered, his dress uniform crisp and commanding, followed by two senior officials carrying a formal document case. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from legal proceedings to something far more significant. Judge Martinez looked puzzled. "Commissioner Valdez, this is highly irregular. We're in the middle of proceedings." "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I have an official announcement that directly pertains to these proceedings and cannot be delayed." Rachel Thompson slowly rose from the plaintiff's table, her movement drawing every eye in the courtroom. For the first time since the trial began, Turner noticed something different about her posture. Not the posture of a victim seeking justice, but the bearing of someone who commanded it. Commissioner Valdez's voice carried through the silent courtroom with formal authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to announce that effective immediately, Dr. Rachel Elizabeth Thompson has been sworn in as the new chief of police for our metropolitan area." The words hit the courtroom like a physical force. Gasps erupted from the gallery. The jury members' eyes widened in shock. Harrison's mouth fell open. But Turner's reaction was the most dramatic. His face drained of all color as reality crashed down on him like a collapsing building. Rachel reached for her blazer and removed it with deliberate precision. Underneath was her dress uniform, midnight blue with polished silver buttons and 4 stars gleaming on each shoulder. 22 years of service ribbons decorated her chest, including commendations for bravery, community service, and leadership excellence. The transformation was stunning. The plaintiff seeking justice had become the ultimate authority figure in law enforcement. The woman Turner had dismissed as belonging at the welfare center was now the highest-ranking police officer in the jurisdiction. "Chief Thompson," Judge Martinez said, clearly struggling to process the revelation, "would you please confirm your new position for the record?" Rachel's voice carried a new weight of authority that filled every corner of the courtroom. "Yes, Your Honor, I am Dr. Rachel Elizabeth Thompson, Chief of Police, sworn in this morning with full authority over all departmental personnel and operations." Her eyes found Turner's across the courtroom. He looked like a man watching his entire world collapse in real time. "This includes," Rachel continued with quiet precision, "full supervisory authority over Officer Derek Turner and the power to make immediate personnel decisions regarding his continued employment." Turner's breathing became shallow and rapid. The woman he had slapped, humiliated, and dismissed as unworthy of basic human respect was now his commanding officer. Every racist assumption, every degrading comment, every moment of abuse had been directed at the person who would now determine his professional fate. Commissioner Valdez stepped forward. Chief Thompson's first official act was to request a comprehensive review of all pending misconduct cases, with particular attention to patterns of discriminatory behavior. Rachel's briefcase, which had seemed impressive before, now revealed its true significance. She opened it to reveal not just legal documents, but official police files, policy manuals, and reform implementation plans. This wasn't the preparation of a plaintiff. This was the strategic planning of a new chief executive. "Your Honor," Rachel said, I believe this information provides important context for understanding why Officer Turner's behavior represents not just individual misconduct, but a systemic failure that I have been brought in to address. Harrison, still reeling from the revelation, attempted to salvage something from the wreckage. Your Honor, this is clearly a conflict of interest. The plaintiff cannot also be the defendant's supervisor. Rachel's response was swift and legally precise. Counselor, my appointment as chief occurred after the incident in question and after this lawsuit was filed. There is no legal conflict, only accountability. Turner finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. You planned this whole thing. Rachel turned to face him directly, her 4 stars catching the courtroom lights. Officer Turner, I plan to seek justice for an unprovoked assault. The fact that you assaulted your future commanding officer speaks to your judgment, not my planning. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that it seemed to alter the very physics of the room. Turner, who had entered these proceedings as a confident defendant, backed by 22 years of institutional protection, was now a subordinate officer facing his new chief in federal court after being exposed as a liar and an abuser. Furthermore, Rachel continued, effective immediately, you are suspended without pay pending the outcome of these proceedings and a comprehensive internal investigation into the pattern of misconduct revealed by today's evidence. Harrison was frantically shuffling papers, clearly unprepared for this development. The jury sat transfixed, watching a real-time demonstration of justice and accountability that none of them had ever witnessed. Rachel checked her watch one final time. 2:05 p.m. Everything had gone exactly according to plan. The woman Derek Turner had thought he could humiliate with impunity had just revealed herself as the most powerful person in his professional world. His career, his reputation, and his future were now in the hands of the person he'd treated as less than human. Justice was about to be served by the very person Turner had wronged, and she had the authority to make it stick. With her new authority revealed, Chief Rachel Thompson approached the witness stand where Derek Turner sat like a cornered animal. The roles had reversed so completely that the courtroom felt like a different universe from an hour earlier. Now it was Chief Thompson conducting what amounted to an official investigation into her own assault. Officer Turner, Rachel began, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of command. Let's discuss your pattern of behavior toward people of color at the courthouse. Harrison objected weakly. Your Honor, the plaintiff cannot interrogate the defendant. Your Honor, Rachel replied smoothly, I am now appearing in my capacity as Chief of Police, conducting official questioning of a subordinate officer regarding documented misconduct. This is within my administrative authority. Judge Martinez, still processing the unprecedented situation, allowed the questioning to continue. Rachel opened a thick file that Turner now recognized with growing horror, his complete personnel record. Officer Turner, in your 22-year career, how many misconduct complaints have been filed against you? Turner's voice was barely audible. I don't recall the exact number. Let me refresh your memory. 17 formal complaints, all involving allegations of discriminatory treatment toward minorities. Would you like me to read them aloud? Turner's hands trembled as Rachel methodically reviewed each incident. The pattern was undeniable and damning. April 2020, Maria Lopez, a federal attorney, filed a complaint after you demanded to see her real identification, claiming her bar card was suspicious. August 2021, Dr. James Mitchell, an African-American federal judge, reported that you questioned his right to enter the courthouse through the main entrance. November 2023, Professor Angela Davis, a constitutional law expert testifying in a federal case, was subjected to a cavity search based on your suspicion that she was smuggling contraband. With each case, Turner sank deeper into his chair. These weren't isolated incidents. They formed a clear pattern of racial profiling that had been systematically ignored by his supervisors. Officer Turner, in 22 years of service, have you ever filed a misconduct report against a white person for suspicious behavior at the courthouse? The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Turner's silence was answer enough. Rachel continued her methodical destruction of Turner's defense. Let's examine the financial cost of your behavior. The city has paid $2.6 million in settlements for civil rights violations connected to your actions. Were you aware of this figure? No, ma'am, Turner whispered. Of course not, because your supervisors deliberately kept this information from public view to protect your career and their own reputations. Rachel presented email chains that revealed the depth of institutional complicity. Turner's lieutenant had written, "Turner's methods keep the undesirables away. Sometimes the end justifies the means." His captain had responded, "As long as no one complains too loudly, let him handle security his way." Rachel's voice grew harder. "Officer Turner, you didn't just abuse individual citizens. You trained junior officers in discriminatory practices. How many officers did you mentor in your screening techniques?" Harrison attempted to object, but Turner was beyond help now. 6 or 7, he admitted. "And did you teach them to profile based on race?" "I taught them to identify threats." "Threats?" Rachel's voice carried lethal precision. "Was Dr. Mitchell a threat? Was Professor Davis a threat? Was Maria Lopez, who prosecuted federal crimes for 13 years, a threat?" Each name hit Turner like a physical blow. These weren't anonymous victims. They were accomplished professionals who'd been humiliated by his prejudice. Rachel pulled out victim impact statements that painted a devastating picture of Turner's effect on the community. Parents afraid to bring their children to the courthouse. Professionals who changed their court schedules to avoid Turner's shifts. Law students who questioned whether the justice system truly served everyone equally. "Officer Turner, do you understand that your actions damage not just individual citizens, but public trust in law enforcement itself?" Turner was crying now, the weight of his exposed behavior crushing whatever remained of his dignity. I was trying to do my job." "Your job," Rachel said with quiet fury, "was to protect and serve all citizens equally. Instead, you turned the courthouse into a place where people of color were presumed guilty until proven worthy of your approval." Rachel presented financial records showing that Turner had cost the department millions in settlements, training programs, and administrative overhead. His discriminatory behavior had become a budget line item. "Officer Turner, effective immediately, you are terminated from the police department for conduct unbecoming, a pattern of civil rights violations, and bringing dishonor to the badge." The words hit Turner like a final judgment. 22 years of career, pension, benefits, all gone in a single sentence from the woman he'd thought he could humiliate without consequence. "Badge and weapon, Officer Turner. Your law enforcement career is over." Turner's transformation from confident abuser to broken ex-cop was complete. The system that had protected him for decades had finally found someone with both the authority and the courage to hold him accountable. The packed courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Chief Rachel Thompson prepared to deliver her closing argument. Media crews had arrived after word of the dramatic identity reveal spread, and community members filled every available seat. This had become more than a civil rights case. It was a referendum on police accountability and justice itself. Rachel stood before the jury, her 4 stars reflecting the courtroom lights, but her demeanor remained grounded and accessible despite her revealed authority. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, 3 hours ago I stood before you as a plaintiff seeking justice for an unprovoked assault. I stand before you now as chief of police, but my message remains the same. No one is above accountability, regardless of their badge or position." Her voice carried both personal conviction and professional authority. "You have seen overwhelming evidence that Officer Turner committed assault and violated my civil rights. But this case represents something larger than one incident between 2 people." Rachel gestured toward Turner, who sat slumped in defeat at the defendant's table. Officer Turner believed he could act with impunity because the system had always protected him. 17 complaints ignored. $2.6 million in taxpayer money spent covering up his misconduct. Junior officers trained in his discriminatory methods. The jury listened intently as Rachel painted the broader picture. This case is about whether we accept a justice system where some people are presumed worthy of respect while others must earn it through proving their status. Officer Turner didn't assault me because I was threatening. He assaulted me because he assumed I didn't belong. Rachel's voice grew stronger. When Officer Turner told me the welfare center was down the street, he revealed his worldview. When he asked about my boyfriend being sentenced, he exposed his prejudices. When he struck me for showing legitimate identification, he demonstrated that to him, I wasn't deserving of basic human dignity. She moved closer to the jury box. The defense wants you to believe this was a misunderstanding, that Officer Turner was just doing his job. But his job was never to humiliate citizens based on their appearance. His job was to protect and serve everyone equally. Rachel opened her briefcase one final time, pulling out the original visitor's credential that Turner had struck from her hand. This piece of paper represents more than just my right to enter a courthouse. It represents every citizen's right to access justice without being presumed unworthy because of their race. Harrison rose for his closing argument, but his position had become hopeless. Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Turner made a mistake, but destroying a 22-year career over one incident serves no one's interests. The words felt hollow in the face of the evidence presented. Harrison tried to portray Turner as a dedicated public servant overwhelmed by stress, but the pattern of misconduct made such arguments laughable. My client asked for your understanding and forgiveness. He has a family to support and has dedicated his life to public service. Rachel's rebuttal was swift and decisive. Counselor speaks of Officer Turner's family, but what about the families he terrorized? What about Dr. Mitchell's children, who watched their father be humiliated for the crime of being black in a courthouse? What about Professor Davis's students, who learned that expertise and credentials don't protect you from prejudice? The emotional weight of Rachel's words filled the courtroom. Forgiveness is important, but it cannot come without accountability. Officer Turner had 22 years to change his behavior, 22 years of complaints that should have prompted reflection and reform. Instead, he doubled down on discrimination. Rachel's closing was reaching its crescendo. I became a police officer 22 years ago because I believed in justice. I pursued law enforcement leadership because I wanted to ensure that the badge represents protection for all citizens, not intimidation for some. Her voice carried both personal pain and professional resolve. Today, you have the power to send a message that abuse of authority will not be tolerated, that civil rights violations have real consequences, and that justice applies to everyone equally. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood with the gravity of someone announcing a historic verdict. In the matter of Thompson versus Turner, we find the defendant liable for assault and civil rights violations. We award damages in the amount of $550,000 and recommend immediate criminal charges. The courtroom erupted. Community members cheered. Media crews scrambled for reactions. Turner's remaining supporters sat in stunned silence. But Rachel's response surprised everyone. She stood and addressed the court directly. Your Honor, I respectfully decline the monetary damages. I request that the awarded amount be directed to establishing a police bias training program and civilian oversight committee. Judge Martinez nodded approvingly. So ordered. The court also recommends that the U.S. Attorney's Office pursue criminal charges for assault under color of authority and civil rights violations. Turner was immediately taken into custody as federal marshals moved to arrest him. The man who had entered the courthouse that morning as an officer with arresting power was leaving in handcuffs. Rachel addressed the media outside the courthouse, flanked by community leaders and civil rights advocates. Today's verdict sends a clear message that law enforcement officers are not above the law they swore to uphold. As Chief of Police, I commit to implementing comprehensive reforms to ensure this pattern of abuse never repeats. A reporter shouted a question. Chief Thompson, do you see this as personal vindication? Rachel's response encapsulated the day's larger meaning. This isn't about personal vindication. This is about institutional accountability. Officer Turner's behavior was a symptom of a system that tolerated discrimination. Today, that system begins to change. The crowd's applause echoed through the courthouse plaza as Dr. Rachel Thompson, no longer just a victim seeking justice, but a leader with the power to enforce it, outlined her vision for police reform and community healing. Derek Turner's reign of terror was over, and a new era of accountability had begun. 6 months after the courthouse steps echoed with applause for justice served, the transformation was remarkable. Derek Turner was serving a 20-month federal sentence for assault under color of authority and civil rights violations. His pension had been revoked, his law enforcement certification permanently stripped. The man who once terrorized courthouse visitors now worked in the prison laundry, his uniform replaced with an orange jumpsuit, his authority reduced to nothing. Turner's family had paid the ultimate price for his prejudice. His wife filed for divorce after the trial, unable to face the community's shame. His children changed their last name and moved across the country to escape the notoriety of their father's disgrace. But the more important changes were happening in the department Chief Rachel Thompson now led. Courthouse security incidents involving people of color had dropped by 82% under new protocols that emphasized dignity and respect for all visitors. The bias training program funded by Turner's lawsuit settlement had become a model copied by police departments nationwide. Rachel stood before the latest police academy graduating class, looking out at the most diverse group of recruits in the department's history. 43% were women, 62% were people of color, and all had been selected based on character, intelligence, and commitment to constitutional policing. Officers, Rachel addressed the graduates, you wear a badge that represents the highest ideals of public service. It does not grant you authority over people. It grants you authority to serve people. The transformation extended beyond individual officers to systemic change. Rachel had implemented civilian oversight committees, mandatory body cameras with third-party storage, and a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. 4 supervisors who had enabled Turner's misconduct were terminated, sending a clear message that institutional cover-ups would no longer be tolerated. The $550,000 settlement had funded not just training programs, but also community healing initiatives. Former victims of police misconduct now participated in dialogue sessions with officers, building bridges between law enforcement and the communities they served. Jasmine Thompson watched her mother's transformation with pride that extended beyond familial admiration. She was witnessing history, not just the rise of the first Black female police chief in their city, but the emergence of a leader who proved that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. Rachel's story had become a symbol of hope, shared millions of times across social media. The original courthouse video, now viewed with full context, served as a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that everyone deserves dignity regardless of assumptions about their status. Speaking at a national police reform conference, Rachel reflected on the journey from victim to victor to visionary. Change doesn't happen because we hope for it. Change happens because we demand it, fight for it, and refuse to accept that this is just how things are. The audience of police chiefs, community leaders, and civil rights advocates gave her a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Justice isn't just about punishment, Rachel concluded. It's about progress. It's about ensuring that what happened to me never happens to anyone else. If this story inspired you, please share it with others who need to see that justice is possible, even when the odds seem impossible. Like this video if you believe in accountability. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage overcoming corruption, and hit the notification bell so you never miss when ordinary people do extraordinary things. Comment below. Have you ever been underestimated because of how others saw you? How did you prove them wrong? Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Next week, we'll bring you another incredible story. Judge dismisses Black student's case until she reveals she's Yale Law Review editor. You won't want to miss how this brilliant young woman turned the tables on a system that tried to silence her voice. Remember, justice may be slow, but it's worth fighting for. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and never let anyone convince you that you don't belong where you have every right to be. Reality isn't always easy to hear, but that's exactly why we tell it. At Black Lives' Stories, we go beyond the surface, showing what others won't. If you value unfiltered truth, hit like, comment your perspective, and subscribe. Every voice matters, and every truth deserves to be heard.